to show up for a huge parade in Havana's central square, the Plaza of the Revolution. Today, Cuban authorities say nearly 1 million people were there, and this is the first year that Raul Castro presided over the rally since he took over from his brother Fidel. NPR's Tom Jelton is in Havana, and he sent us this report.
Last year, the suspense here was whether Fidel Castro would come from his hospital bed to review the workers' parade he had on nearly every other May Day since taking power. He did not show up. This year, Raul Castro is Cuba's president. Fidel has not been seen in public for a year and a half. Raul made his entrance quietly. Fidel always saw the May Day rallies as opportunities for fiery speeches. 2 years ago here, Fidel spoke for 3 hours. But Raul did not say one word today. The only Cuban leader to address the workers was the Secretary General of the Cuban Workers Federation, Salvador Valdez. We have to focus our efforts on increasing production, Valdez said, especially in agriculture. His message was virtually identical to one Raul gave a few days ago before a Communist Party meeting. A senior party leader standing nearby told me that Raul doesn't think the same people should speak at all events. His priority since becoming president 2 months ago has been to strengthen institutions in Cuba. In recent weeks, Raul has announced a series of reforms and policy changes meant to improve the lives of workers. Most recently, salary increases for some government employees. Union leaders aligned with the government, such as Raimundo Navarro, now have to worry that worker expectations may grow too fast. There are people who think we'll all wake up tomorrow and say they've increased our salaries. But that's not possible, Navarro says. So the union leadership has to explain this to the workers. As long as Fidel was running Cuba, he used big rallies like this to mobilize the workers behind his government. Now Raul is president, but the name heard over and over again today was Fidel. Many people carried his picture. Most of the people in this march are walking together with their colleagues from work. These marches are organized in the workplace, and everyone is expected to take part. Many are carrying flags and banners that identify their place of work. Walking by me right now are a group of workers from the Bucanero Brewery in Havana. Alongside them are a group of workers from the Havana Zoo. Today showed again that Raul is not the charismatic leader that Fidel was, and the big question now is whether Raul can manage to keep his country stable and the Cuban people satisfied without playing a dramatic leadership role. The changes he's introduced so far are minor. Whether there will be more food in the markets as a result of the agricultural reforms he's proposed is far from certain. And away from the excitement of the parade site, some of the enthusiasm for the government diminishes. Everything is the same, says this woman, Barbara, who works for the Ministry of Transportation. It's like always. She is sitting on a park bench with a friend, tired after walking the long parade route. She says she marched today to show solidarity with Fidel and Raul, but then she suddenly asks about life in the United States. And she says she intends to leave Cuba whenever she can, as soon as she can. Huh? Take me with you, she says. Tom Jelton, NPR News, Havana.
The challenges of training for the Olympics in Baghdad. Stories coming up on All Things Considered.
And you're listening to All Things Considered on WOSU, NPR News and Classical Music. Cloudy skies tonight with a low of 57. A chance of showers and thunderstorms coming in Friday. Stay warm, a high in the mid-70s. Saturday, showers and thunderstorms are also possible midday. Windy conditions on Saturday and a high of 70 degrees.
Hi, this is Fred Anderle. Tomorrow on Open Line, Wall Street Journal reporter Douglas Blackman with the untold story of the re-enslavement of black Americans from the Civil War to World War II. Then NASA climate scientist James Hansen says the clock is running out on irreversible climate change. Open Line tomorrow, 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. for WOSU 820. NPR News, streaming live on the web at WOSU. NBRnews.org.
Support for WOSU comes from Meijer, proud to offer fresh meats, fruits, and vegetables from local farmers and other local growers. More information is available at Meijer.com.
WOSU Public Media and the Columbus Speech and Hearing Center present the 17th Annual Great Communicators Luncheon featuring baseball legend Cal Ripken Jr. That's coming up next Tuesday at 11:30 in the morning. For ticket information, call 843-1757.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel. There is news today from one of the less prominent theaters in the Bush administration's war on al-Qaeda. A U.S. airstrike in Somalia killed the leader of a militia that was recently put on the U.S. terrorism blacklist. NPR's Michelle Kellerman is following the story.
A U.S. Central Command spokeswoman, Lieutenant Colonel Cheryl Law, would say little about the latest military action in the Horn of Africa.
U.S. Central Command conducted an attack against a known al-Qaeda target and militia leader in Somalia on May 1st. The U.S. is committed to the global war on terrorism and the pursuit of terrorists wherever they operate.
The U.S. has a base in nearby Djibouti, and this was just the latest in a series of targeted attacks against Islamists in Somalia. The al-Shabaab militia confirmed that its leader, Aden Hashi Airo, was killed along with several others. The State Department terrorism report released yesterday describes the al-Shabaab as a group of radicalized young men, some of whom have trained in Afghanistan. Just how tied the group is to al-Qaeda is an issue of debate. Matt Bryden, a Nairobi-based analyst who keeps tabs on Somalia, describes it this way.
Some of their leaders, including Airo, had links to members of al-Qaeda in Somalia. There's a handful of foreign al-Qaeda figures in Somalia. And Airo was implicated in the deaths of a number of foreigners, aid workers and journalists, as well as some prominent Somalis.
That's how Airo gained notoriety, Bryden says. While he says this U.S. attack was a success, the U.S. strategy to go after individuals has been a risky one in Somalia, where Islamist insurgents have been fighting the Ethiopian-backed transitional government. John Prendergast of the Enough Project says similar U.S. airstrikes have helped the radical militias like the al-Shabaab.
With each one of these strikes from the air, the rebound inside Somalia is so negative of the foreign power, striking at Somalia's sovereignty from afar, that it enables extremist groups to recruit.
He argues the U.S. should be doing more on the diplomatic front to try to persuade the government to negotiate with the more moderate elements of the Islamist movement. Ken Menkhaus, a former UN advisor on Somalia who teaches at Davidson College, warns the latest U.S. military action could make this more complicated.
Shabaab and Airo were not loved in Somalia. Most Somalis feared and dreaded their tactics, but Shabaab, because they were posing as the main liberation movement against an Ethiopian occupation, had the support of a lot of Somalis, and so this attack is likely to polarize the opposition, and I personally think it endangers the peace talks.
A United Nations mediator is trying to bring together Somali factions for talks on May 10th. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
In Iraq, wearing frayed running shoes, Dana Hussein dodges sniper fire, sectarian killings, and occasional car bombs as she trains. The Iraqi sprinter is preparing to face the finest